My name is Whitney, and I am 28 years old. This morning, I woke up to 29 missed calls on my phone, all from the same number. A number I recognized instantly, even though I had not seen it in 20 years. It was my parents. The same people who left me at a train station when I was 8 years old, telling each other it would be funny to see how I would find my way home. I never went back. For 2 decades, I built a life they knew nothing about. And now, after all this time, they found me. Before we dive into this story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please drop a comment below and let me know. If this story resonates with you, or if you have ever felt abandoned or overlooked, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Now let me take you back to that day, 20 years ago, when everything changed. Growing up in Portland, Oregon, I lived in what looked like the perfect family from the outside. We had a 2-story colonial-style house in a quiet neighborhood with trimmed lawns and friendly neighbors who waved at each other every morning. My father, Frank, worked as an accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. He wore the same gray suits every week and came home at exactly 6:15 every evening. My mother, Diane, taught 3rd grade at Lincoln Elementary School. She had this way of smiling at other people's children that made them light up, but that smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. Then there was my younger brother, Jake. He was 3 years younger than me, which made him 5 years old at the time. Jake had these bright blue eyes and blonde curls that everyone said made him look like an angel. People would stop my mother at the grocery store to compliment how adorable he was. I had brown hair and hazel eyes different from both of them. Even as a child, I noticed that difference, though I did not understand what it meant yet. Our house smelled like vanilla candles and fresh laundry. We had family dinners at the oak table in our dining room. We went on weekend picnics to Laurelhurst Park. We looked happy, but underneath that surface there was something cold, something I could feel even at 8 years old, but could not name. I started noticing the differences in how they treated Jake and me when I was about 6. Small things at first. When it was Jake's birthday, he got to choose any restaurant he wanted, and we would all go celebrate. When it was my birthday, Mom would bake a cake at home and we would eat it quietly after dinner. Nothing special. When Jake accidentally knocked over a vase in the living room, shattering it into pieces across the hardwood floor, Dad just laughed and said, "Accidents happen, buddy." But when I spilled a glass of milk at breakfast one morning, Mom's face went tight and she snapped, "Whitney, you need to be more careful. Clean that up right now." See, I remember bringing home a math test with a big red A+ written at the top. I was so proud. I ran into the kitchen where Dad was reading the newspaper and showed it to him. He glanced at it for maybe 2 seconds and said, "Good, that is what we expect from you." Then he went back to his paper. A week later, Jake brought home a spelling test with a B on it. Mom hung it on the refrigerator with a magnet and called Dad over to see. They both hugged Jake and told him how proud they were. Mom even made his favorite cookies that afternoon to celebrate. I started to wonder what I was doing wrong. I tried harder at school. I kept my room cleaner than clean. I offered to help with chores without being asked. But nothing changed. The warmth they gave Jake never extended to me. I was always on the outside looking in at my own family. The only person who made me feel seen was my grandmother, Ruth. She was my mother's mother, a small woman with silver hair she wore in a neat bun and hands that always smelled like the lavender lotion she kept by her kitchen sink. Every other Sunday, we would visit her house in Beaverton, about 20 minutes away. While Mom and Dad sat in the living room with Jake, Grandma Ruth would take me into her garden. One afternoon, I was helping her water her rose bushes when I finally asked the question that had been sitting heavy in my chest. "Grandma, why does Mom not like me?" She stopped watering and looked at me with such sadness in her eyes. She set down the watering can and knelt down so we were face to face. "Oh, my dear girl," she said softly. "Sometimes grown-ups have problems that have nothing to do with the children around them. It is not your fault. Do you understand that you are a wonderful, smart, kind little girl?" I wanted to believe her, but it was hard when every day at home told me something different. Before we left that day, Grandma Ruth gave me something. She took off a delicate silver necklace she always wore, a simple chain with a tiny heart pendant, and fastened it around my neck. "I want you to have this," she said. "Whenever you feel alone, touch this and remember that I love you. Always." I wore that necklace every single day. It became my security blanket, the one thing that reminded me I mattered to someone. About a week before everything fell apart, my parents announced we were taking a family trip to Seattle. I remember the excitement that bubbled up in my chest. Maybe this would be it. Maybe on this trip away from home and daily routines, we could become a real family. Maybe they would finally see me. I spent the whole week imagining what we would do: visit the Space Needle, walk along Pike Place Market, eat at nice restaurants. I pictured Mom taking my hand as we walked through the city. I imagined Dad ruffling my hair and asking me what I wanted to see. I packed my small backpack with my favorite book, a sweatshirt, and a disposable camera I had been saving my allowance to buy. The night before we were supposed to leave, I could not sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the glow in the dark stars stuck to my ceiling, counting down the hours. Around 10 o'clock, I heard voices downstairs. Mom and Dad were still up talking in the living room. Their voices were low, but our old house carried sound through the vents. I crept to the top of the stairs and sat down listening. "We need to do something about that girl," Mom was saying. Her voice had an edge to it, sharp and cold. "I cannot keep pretending." "Let me handle it," Dad replied. "I have an idea. It will solve everything." I did not understand what they meant, what needed to be solved. What was Dad planning? A knot formed in my stomach, but I pushed it away. I was 8 years old. I still wanted to believe my parents loved me even when all evidence pointed otherwise. The next morning, I woke up early and got dressed in my favorite outfit: jeans and a denim jacket with embroidered flowers on the pockets. I brushed my hair and tied it back with a scrunchie. I wanted to look nice for our family trip. I wanted them to be proud to have me with them. We left the house at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning in October. The air had that crisp autumn chill that made me zip my jacket up to my chin. Jake was sleepy and whiny, complaining about having to wake up early. Mom carried him to the car while Dad loaded our bags into the trunk. I climbed into the back seat, clutching my backpack on my lap, trying to contain my nervous excitement. The drive to Union Station took about 40 minutes. No one talked much. Dad kept his eyes on the road. Mom stared out the window. Jake fell asleep against his car seat. I looked out at the familiar streets of Portland passing by, then gradually changing into areas I did not recognize as well. When we pulled into the parking lot of the train station, my heart was beating fast. Union Station was this beautiful old building with high ceilings and big windows that let in streams of morning light. It was crowded that day, families pulling rolling suitcases, business travelers with briefcases and coffee cups. A man playing guitar near one of the benches, his case open for donations. The air smelled like coffee and pastries from the little cafe near the entrance. Dad went to the ticket counter while Mom took Jake toward the food vendor, saying he needed a snack. She turned to me before walking away and said, "Whitney, you stay right here by this column. Do not move. Do not go anywhere. Do you understand?" I nodded. "Yes, Mom." She looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable, then turned and walked away with Jake's hand in hers. I stood next to column number 7, which had a big 7 painted on it in faded gold numbers. I watched people hurry past me. A little girl around my age walked by, holding both her parents' hands, swinging between them and giggling. I felt a pang of longing so sharp it hurt. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I started looking around for my family. Where were they? Had they forgotten about me? My chest felt tight. I scanned the crowd, standing on my tiptoes to see over people's heads. Then I saw them, all the way across the station near Platform 5. Mom, Dad, and Jake. They were boarding a train, not looking for me, not searching the crowd, just boarding. I ran. I ran as fast as my 8-year-old legs could carry me, dodging around travelers and their luggage, my backpack bouncing against my shoulders. "Mom!" I shouted. "Dad! Wait!" I reached the platform just as the train doors were closing. I banged on the window with my small fists. "Please, wait for me!" And then I saw them, through the window. Mom and Dad were sitting in their seats with Jake between them. They saw me. I know they did because our eyes met. Mom's face showed nothing. No surprise. No panic. Just nothing. Dad said something to her, and I saw his mouth move. Then he smiled. Actually smiled. The window was slightly open, and I heard his voice clearly. "Let's see how she finds her way home. Maybe she'll learn to appreciate what she has." Mom nodded and said, "This will teach her a lesson." The train pulled away. I stood there on the platform frozen, watching it disappear down the tracks. My hands were still raised where they had been pounding on the glass. People walked around me annoyed that I was blocking the walkway, but I could not move. My brain could not process what had just happened. My parents just left me. On purpose, as a joke, to teach me a lesson. A lesson about what? What had I done wrong? A station employee, a woman with kind eyes and graying hair, came over and bent down to my level. "Sweetie, are you lost? Where are your parents?" My voice came out small and broken. They got on the train. To Seattle. They left me here. Oh, honey, I am sure it was an accident. These things happen. They will realize and come back for you. Let's go to the office and wait. Okay. But I knew. Deep in my bones, I knew they were not coming back. This was not an accident. I had heard what my father said. I had seen the smile on his face. They did not want me. They never had. And if I let this woman take me to the office, eventually the police would come and they would send me back to that house, back to people who threw me away like I was garbage. So when the woman turned to speak to another employee, I ran. I slipped away into the crowd and out of the station into the streets of Portland with nothing but the clothes on my back, $11 in my jacket pocket, and my grandmother's necklace around my neck. I was 8 years old and I had just become homeless. The first few days were the hardest. I had no idea how to survive on the streets. I had grown up in a warm house with regular meals and a soft bed. Now I was sleeping on park benches in Waterfront Park, covering myself with newspaper I found in recycling bins, trying to stay warm as October nights grew colder. I was terrified. Every sound made me jump. Every stranger felt like a potential threat. At night, I would curl up as small as possible under a bench near the river, clutching my backpack to my chest, touching Grandma Ruth's necklace, and whispering to myself that everything would be okay. But I did not believe it. Hunger was worse than fear. By the second day, my stomach hurt so badly I felt dizzy. I had eaten the granola bar I had packed for the train ride, and my $11 bought me a small sandwich and a bottle of water from a convenience store, but that money did not last long. On the third morning, I was desperate enough to dig through trash cans behind restaurants looking for food that had been thrown away but was still edible. I found half a sandwich in a wrapper, and even though it made me want to cry to eat garbage, I ate it anyway. That same afternoon, I was walking near a small bakery called Maria's Pan Dulce when the smell of fresh bread made my stomach cramp with hunger. I stood outside, just breathing in the smell, wishing I could afford even one roll. The door opened and a woman came out. She was maybe 60 years old, with deep brown skin, warm eyes, and gray-streaked black hair pulled back in a braid. She wore a flour-dusted apron and had the kindest face I had ever seen. She looked at me standing there, and something in her expression changed. Without saying a word, she went back inside and returned with a paper bag. "Here, mija," she said, holding it out to me. "You look hungry." I took the bag with shaking hands. Inside was a warm roll, still soft and fresh, and a small container of milk. I looked up at her, and tears started running down my face. I could not help it. It was the first kindness anyone had shown me since my grandmother. "Thank you," I whispered. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "Whitney." "I'm Maria. Where is your family, Whitney?" I could not tell her the truth. If I told her I had been abandoned, she would call the authorities. They would send me back. So I lied. "I don't have one anymore." Something sad flickered in Maria's eyes, but she did not push. She just nodded. "Okay, mija. You come here every morning, you understand. I will give you breakfast. Every single morning." And she kept that promise. Every morning for months, I showed up at Maria's bakery right when she opened at 6, and she gave me a bag with food. Sometimes it was bread and fruit. Sometimes it was leftover tamales from the day before. She never asked questions. She never made me feel small or shameful. She just fed me. One morning, while I sat on the curb outside her shop eating, she came and sat next to me. "You are stronger than you think, mija," she said. "I don't know what happened to you, but I can see you are a fighter. Never let anyone make you feel worthless. You hear me?" I nodded, my mouth full of bread. I wish I could do more for you, she continued. I'm getting old. My health is not good. I can't take you in, but I can make sure you eat. That much I can do. It's enough, I told her. And it was. In a world where I had nothing, her daily kindness was everything. As October turned to November, the weather got colder. Sleeping outside became dangerous. I needed to find real shelter. I wandered through downtown Portland looking for anywhere warm and safe. That is when I found an abandoned building near the river. The windows were broken and the door hung off its hinges, but inside it was dry and out of the wind. I was not the only one who had found it. There was a small group of homeless young people living there, mostly teenagers. At first, they were suspicious of me. An 8-year-old was unusual on the streets. But a girl named Sage, who was 17 with bright red dyed hair and a nose ring, took me under her wing. "What are you doing out here, kid?" she asked me the first night. "Same thing as you, I guess," I said quietly. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "All right, you can stay, but you have to pull your weight. We look out for each other here. Deal. Deal." Sage and the others taught me how to survive. They showed me where to find clean water, where the public restrooms were that did not kick you out, where charities gave away warm clothes and blankets, how to avoid cops who would ask too many questions, how to stay safe, and which areas of the city to avoid at night. Sage herself had run away from home when she was 15 after years of abuse from her stepfather. She understood what it meant to be unwanted. "You are tough, kid," she told me one cold night as we huddled around a small fire in a metal barrel behind the building. "Most 8-year-olds would not survive this, but you are going to be okay. I can tell." That first winter was brutal. There were nights I thought I might freeze to death, mornings when I woke up and could not feel my fingers, days when I was so tired and hungry I could barely walk. But I survived. I survived because giving up felt like letting my parents win, and I refused to let them win. When spring finally came and I turned 9 years old, I made a decision. I could not keep living like this, just surviving day to day. I needed to learn. I needed to prepare for a future. So I started going to the public library. The Central Library on 10th Avenue was warm, clean, safe, and full of books. No one asked questions if you just sat quietly and read. I taught myself to read better by working through children's books, then graduating to harder ones. I found old textbooks and taught myself math, science, history. The librarian, a woman named Helen who wore colorful scarves and reading glasses on a chain, noticed me coming in every single day. She never asked where my parents were or why I was there for 8 hours straight. She just started leaving books on the table near where I sat. Books she thought I might like. Books that would teach me things. One day, she sat down across from me. "You are a very dedicated reader," she said. "I like learning," I replied. "I can see that. You know, if you ever need help finding a book, or if you want to learn something specific, you can ask me. That's what I'm here for." "Thank you, Miss Helen." She smiled. "Just Helen is fine, dear." From that day on, Helen became my unofficial teacher. She guided my education, suggesting books that would expand my knowledge. Bringing in workbooks she said were extras, but I suspected she bought specifically for me. Because of her, I kept learning even though I was not in school. By the time I was 10, I could read at a high school level. By 11, I was teaching myself algebra from textbooks. When I turned 14, something changed. I had spent 6 years surviving on the streets, and while I was proud that I had made it that far, I knew I could not keep living like this forever. I needed more. I needed a real chance at life. Helen had noticed my determination over the years. One afternoon, she called me over to the reference desk. "Whitney, I want you to meet someone," she said. Standing next to her was another woman, maybe 50 years old, with short gray hair and a warm professional demeanor. "This is Linda Carter. She runs a program that helps young people in situations like yours." My guard went up immediately. "What kind of program?" Linda smiled gently. "A program that provides shelter, education, and support for teenagers experiencing homelessness. We have a residential facility where you could have your own bed, regular meals, and the chance to go to school. Real school with teachers and classes and a diploma at the end." "You would send me back," I said flatly. "Back to my parents." "No," Linda said firmly. "You are 14, old enough to have some autonomy in the system. If you do not want to return to your parents, we will not force you. This is your choice, Whitney, but I want you to know you have options. You do not have to live like this." I looked at Helen, who nodded encouragingly. I looked back at Linda. The idea of having a bed, of being warm and safe every night of going to real school, it was tempting. More than tempting. But I was scared. I had survived by trusting no one. How could I trust this, "Can I think about it?" I asked. "Of course," Linda said. "Take all the time you need. Helen knows how to reach me." I thought about it for 3 days. I weighed the risks against the possibilities. Finally, I decided, if I wanted any kind of future, I had to take this chance. I found Linda and told her I was ready. The Youth Hope Center was a 3-story building in southeast Portland. It housed about 20 teenagers at a time, all of us from difficult backgrounds. I was assigned to a small room I shared with another girl named Priya, who was 15 and had been kicked out by her family for being gay. We each had our own bed, a small desk, and a dresser. It was not much, but to me it felt like luxury. The rules were strict. Curfew at 9 on weeknights, 10 on weekends, mandatory attendance at school, weekly counseling sessions, chores rotations. But I did not mind. Structure felt good after years of chaos. I enrolled in a public high school nearby, starting as a freshman, even though I had missed 6 years of formal education. The first few months were incredibly hard. I was so far behind in some subjects. I did not know how to interact with other kids my age. I had no idea how to navigate social hierarchies or lunchroom politics. I felt like an alien, but I was determined. I studied harder than anyone else in my classes. I stayed up until midnight every night reading and doing homework and teaching myself everything I had missed. My math teacher, Mr. Peterson, noticed. He was a balding man in his 50s who wore bow ties and had a passion for numbers that was almost contagious. One day after class, he asked me to stay behind. "Whitney, I have been reviewing your work. You have an exceptional mind for mathematics. Your problem-solving skills are far beyond your grade level." I shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I just like puzzles." "It's more than that. You have a gift. Have you thought about what you want to do after high school?" No one had ever asked me that before. I had been so focused on surviving that I had not let myself dream beyond the next day. I do not know." "Well, start thinking about it. Because with your abilities, you could go to college. You could study engineering or computer science or finance. You could build any kind of life you want." His words planted a seed in my mind. College, a career, a life. Maybe I could have those things. Maybe I was not destined to be defined by my abandonment forever. By the time I was 16, I had caught up to my peers. By 17, I was excelling. I took every advanced class offered. I joined the math club. I tutored other students to earn a little money. And I saved every single penny I made, determined to build a foundation for my future. When I was 18 and graduation approached, I applied to Portland State University. I wrote an essay about resilience and survival without going into too much detail about my past. I submitted my transcripts, which were now full of A's, and I waited. When the acceptance letter came with a full academic scholarship, I cried. I sat on my bed in my little room at the Youth Hope Center and cried with relief and pride and disbelief. I had done it. Despite everything, I had made it here. I chose to major in finance. Mr. Peterson had been right about my aptitude for numbers, but more than that, I chose it because I never wanted to be financially vulnerable again. I wanted to understand money, how to earn it, how to manage it, how to build security. I wanted to make sure I would never be helpless. College was demanding. I worked 2 jobs to support myself even with the scholarship. I worked mornings at a coffee shop near campus making lattes and wiping down tables from 5 until 9. Then I went to classes. Then I worked evenings at the university library shelving books and helping students find resources until closing. I studied late into the night. I had no social life, no time for parties or dating or the typical college experience. But I did not care. I had a goal. I graduated when I was 22 with a 3.9 GPA and a degree in finance. Within a month, I had a job offer from a small financial advisory firm called Cascade Financial Advisors. It was not glamorous. The office was cramped, the pay was modest, and my title was Junior Financial Analyst. But it was mine. I had earned it. I threw myself into my work with the same intensity I had brought to my studies. I arrived early and stayed late. I took on extra projects. I learned everything I could from the senior advisors. I built relationships with clients and proved I could be trusted with their financial futures. My boss, a man named Gerald who wore suspenders and had a booming laugh, took notice. "You have something special, Whitney," he told me after I had been there 2 years. "You care, really care. That is rare." By the time I was 25, I had been promoted to senior financial analyst. 2 years later, at 27, I became financial manager overseeing a team of 5 people. My salary had grown to $85,000 a year. It was more money than I had ever imagined having. More than enough to not just survive, but to actually live. I bought my first home when I was 27, a small one-bedroom condo in the Pearl District. It had big windows that let in afternoon light and a tiny balcony where I could drink my morning coffee. It was mine. No landlord could kick me out. No shelter could turn me away. It was mine. My life was quiet and structured. I worked hard during the week. On weekends, I went to the farmer's market and cooked simple meals. I read books. I went for runs along the river. I existed in peace. I did not date much. Trusting people with my heart felt impossible when my own parents had thrown it away. I had a few casual friendships with coworkers, but I kept them at arm's length. I had learned early that relying on others was dangerous. The only piece of my past I kept was Grandma Ruth's necklace. I wore it every single day under my work clothes, hidden, but always there. About 10 years after I had been abandoned when I was 18, I had seen her obituary in the Oregonian. Ruth Sullivan, beloved mother and grandmother, passed away peacefully at 79. There was a small funeral notice. I had not gone to the service. I could not risk seeing my parents. But I mourned her alone in my room at the shelter, crying for the only person who had ever truly loved me. I never looked for my parents. Never tried to find out what happened to them or Jake. I did not want to know. They had made their choice 20 years ago at that train station, and I had made mine. I survived. I thrived, and I did it completely without them. Until one Monday morning in October, exactly 20 years after they left me, when my phone would not stop ringing. I woke up at 6 that morning to the sound of my phone buzzing on my nightstand. I reached over, still half asleep, and saw an unknown number on the screen. I declined the call and rolled over, thinking it was a spam caller. 5 minutes later, it rang again. Same number. I declined again. Then again. And again. By the time I dragged myself out of bed at 6:30, I had 15 missed calls from the same number. Annoyed and a little unnerved, I got ready for work. Showered, dressed in my usual business casual attire, made coffee, and tried to ignore my phone. But it kept ringing. By the time I was ready to leave for the office at 7:45, I had 29 missed calls. Finally, frustrated, I checked my voicemail. There was one new message. I pressed play and put the phone to my ear. "Whitney," a woman's voice said, trembling and desperate. "This is your mother. I know it has been a very long time, but we need to talk. It is urgent. Please, please call me back. This is about family. This is important. Please." I stood in my kitchen, frozen, staring at nothing. That voice. I had not heard it in 20 years, but I recognized it instantly. Diane. My mother. The woman who left me at a train station and never looked back. The woman who watched me bang on the train window and did nothing. She was calling me. After 20 years of silence, she wanted to talk. My first instinct was to delete the message and block the number. I owed her nothing. She had no right to contact me after what she did. But something stopped me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the need to know why, after all this time, she was reaching out. Maybe I just wanted to hear her try to explain the unexplainable. Instead of calling back, I did something else first. I sat down at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and searched for Frank and Diane Sullivan in Portland, Oregon. It took less than 5 minutes to find them. They still lived in the same house, the one I had grown up in. There were a few public records, nothing unusual. Then I found Frank's Facebook profile. It was mostly private, but I could see a few public posts. Most of them were about Jake. Photos of him at his high school graduation. Proud parent posts about him going to the University of Oregon. Then the posts stopped 3 years ago. I searched for Jake Sullivan specifically, and my stomach dropped when I found his obituary. Jacob Michael Sullivan, beloved son and brother, died at age 23 in a car accident. He was survived by his parents, Frank and Diane. So Jake was dead. The golden child, the one they kept, the one they loved, was gone. And now, suddenly, they remembered they had a daughter. Now, they were calling me. I felt cold rage settle into my chest. They only wanted me now because they had lost him. But I still did not call back. Not yet. I went to work trying to focus on the quarterly reports I needed to review, but I could not concentrate. All morning, I kept thinking about that voicemail, about the desperation in her voice. At lunch, sitting at my desk with a salad, I could not bring myself to eat. I decided I needed more information before I engaged with them at all. That afternoon, I received an email. The subject line read, "Urgent legal matter regarding estate of Ruth Sullivan." I opened it immediately. It was from a law firm, Hartman and Associates. The email was formal and professional. Dear Ms. Whitney Sullivan, we represent Frank and Diane Sullivan in a matter concerning the estate of your late grandmother, Ruth Sullivan. It has come to light that there are unresolved issues regarding her will and testament which directly concern you as a named beneficiary. We request your presence at our offices to discuss this matter at your earliest convenience. Please contact us to schedule a meeting. My heart was pounding. Grandma Ruth's estate. I was a beneficiary. That meant she had left me something in her will. But she died 13 years ago. Why was this just coming up now? I read the email 3 more times trying to understand. Then, realization hit me like a punch to the gut. They had hidden it. My parents had hidden her will from me. They had kept whatever she left me, and now, for some reason, they were finally admitting it. I called the law firm immediately and scheduled a meeting for the next day. Then finally, I called the number that had been blowing up my phone all morning. My mother answered on the first ring. "Whitney." Her voice broke on my name. "Oh my God, Whitney, you are alive. You are really alive." "Of course I am alive," I said coldly. "Did you think I was dead, or did you just hope I was—" Silence. Then the sound of crying. "Whitney, please. We need to talk. Can we meet? Can we see you?" "Why now?" I asked. 20 years, not a single word, and now you want to talk. Why? Because, she hesitated, because I am sick, Whitney. I have cancer, stage 4. And Jake passed away 3 years ago. We do not have much time left, and there are things you need to know. Things about your grandmother's will. Things we need to explain." I felt nothing. No sympathy. No sadness. Just emptiness. "I have a meeting scheduled with the lawyer tomorrow," I said. "I will see you there. Do not call me again until then." "Whitney, please let me explain." I hung up. That night I could not sleep. I lay in bed, staring at my ceiling, touching Grandma Ruth's necklace, thinking about what tomorrow might bring. I thought about that 8-year-old girl standing on a train platform watching her family abandon her. I thought about every cold night I had spent on the streets, every meal I scrounged from garbage, every moment I had to fight to survive. And I thought about my parents living comfortably in their warm house all these years, spending money that should have been mine raising Jake while I raised myself. By the time the sun came up, I had made peace with whatever was about to happen. I was not that powerless child anymore. I was 28 years old, educated, successful, and strong. They could not hurt me now. Not unless I let them. The law offices of Hartman and Associates were in a glass building downtown. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in my best navy suit, my hair pulled back in a neat bun. I wanted to look professional and composed, untouchable. I checked in with the receptionist and was led to a conference room with a long, polished table and leather chairs. I sat down and waited. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Catherine Jenkins, whom I had hired the day before, sat beside me. I had explained the situation to her, and she had agreed to represent me. "Let me handle the legal talk," she had said. "You just stay calm and let them know you are not someone they can manipulate." At exactly 10 o'clock, the door opened. My parents walked in. I had not seen them in 20 years, and the change was shocking. My father, Frank, looked old. His hair was completely white, and he walked with a slight stoop. He wore a suit that looked a little too big on him, like he had lost weight. My mother, Diane, looked even worse. She was thin, almost skeletal, wearing a headscarf that covered where her hair had been. Her face was gaunt, her skin pale. She looked like she was dying because she was. They stopped when they saw me. Diane's hand flew to her mouth. "Whitney," she whispered, "look at you. You are all grown up. You are beautiful." I said nothing. I just looked at them with no expression on my face. Behind them came their lawyer, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit, who introduced himself as Richard Hartman. Everyone sat down. The air in the room was thick with tension. Hartman cleared his throat and began. "Thank you all for coming. We are here to discuss the estate of Ruth Sullivan, who passed away in 2013. Her will, which was executed and notarized in 2012, contains specific provisions regarding her granddaughter, Whitney Sullivan." He slid a document across the table to me. I picked it up and began reading. My grandmother had left me everything. Her house in Beaverton, worth approximately $400,000 at the time, and a cash sum of $250,000 that had been in her savings and investments. It was all supposed to come to me. "Why am I only hearing about this now?" I asked quietly. "She died 13 years ago." Hartman looked uncomfortable. He glanced at my parents. "Perhaps Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan would like to explain." I turned to face them directly. My father could not meet my eyes. My mother was crying quietly. "You hid it," I said. "It was not a question. You hid her will from me. You kept everything she left me." My father finally spoke. We did not think you were coming back. After that day at the station, we looked for you, but you looked for me." My voice was sharp. "Really, because I was right here in Portland the whole time, living on the streets, sleeping in abandoned buildings, going through trash for food, and you could not find me." "We reported you missing," my mother said weakly. "We told the police." "You told them what? That you abandoned your daughter at a train station as a joke, and then left without her. Did you mention that part?" Silence. Catherine leaned forward. "Let me make something clear. The will is legal and binding. Whitney is the rightful heir to Ruth Sullivan's estate. The fact that she was not notified is at minimum a serious ethical violation. At worst, it is fraud. Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan, did you use any of the money or property that was designated for Whitney?" More silence. Then my father spoke. "We used the money. For Jake's education. For medical bills when he got sick. For the funeral when he died. The house. We have been living in it. We thought Whitney was gone. We thought she would never come back." I laughed. It was a bitter, harsh sound. "You thought I was gone, so you just took what was mine. You spent my inheritance on the son you actually wanted, and now that he is dead and you are desperate, you suddenly remember you have a daughter." "That is not fair," my mother said, her voice rising. "You do not understand what we went through." "What you went through?" I stood up, my hands flat on the table. "You left me. You looked me in the eyes through that train window and you smiled. Dad said, 'Let's see how she finds her way home.' You thought it was funny. You thought abandoning an 8-year-old child was funny." My father looked up at me then, and I saw something break in his expression. "It was not supposed to happen like that." "Then what was it supposed to be?" He took a shaky breath. "You want the truth? Fine. You were not Diane's daughter. You were the result of my affair. Your biological mother died in childbirth. I brought you home and I asked Diane to raise you as ours. She tried. She really did try. But every time she looked at you, she saw my betrayal. She saw the affair. And when Jake came along, our real son together, it just became harder." The room went silent. I felt like I had been punched. I had suspected I was different, but hearing it confirmed was something else entirely. I was not just unwanted. I was a living reminder of my father's infidelity. "So you threw me away," I said softly, "because keeping me was inconvenient." "We made a terrible mistake," Diane said, reaching toward me across the table. "We were young and stupid and we did not know how to handle it, but we regret it. We have regretted it every day since." "No, you have not," I said. "If you regretted it, you would have looked for me. Really looked. You would have found me. But you did not because you were relieved I was gone, and you only called me now because you need something. You need money for treatment. You need help. Well, guess what? I do not owe you anything." Catherine pulled out another document. "Here is what is going to happen. We are filing a legal claim to recover all assets from Ruth Sullivan's estate that rightfully belong to Whitney. That includes the house which you have been living in without legal right, and the full amount of money that was designated for her, plus interest and damages for the 13 years it was withheld." Hartman looked panicked. "That could amount to over $500,000 with interest and property value." "Yes," Catherine said calmly. "It could." My mother was sobbing now. "Whitney, please. I am dying. We do not have that kind of money. We will lose everything." I looked at her for a long moment. Part of me, a very small part, felt sorry for her. She looked so frail and broken. But then I remembered being 8 years old and terrified, and that small part hardened into steel. "You should have thought about that 20 years ago," I said. "I am taking what is mine, what my grandmother wanted me to have. If you have to sell your house to pay me back, then sell it. I do not care." "We are your parents," my father said desperately. "No," I replied. "You are the people who gave me life and then threw it away. That does not make you my parents. I have no parents." I stood up and gathered my things. Catherine stood with me. "We will be in touch with next steps," she told Hartman. "My client has been more than patient." As I walked toward the door, my mother called out one more time, "Whitney, please, do not do this. We are still your family." I stopped and turned back. "You stopped being my family the moment that train pulled away from the station. I survived without you. I built a life without you, and I will continue living without you. Do not contact me again." I walked out of that conference room with my head held high, Catherine beside me. As the elevator doors closed, I finally let myself breathe. It was over. I had faced them. I had told them exactly how I felt. And I had won. The legal process took 3 months, but the outcome was exactly what Catherine had predicted. The court ruled in my favor. My grandmother's will was clear and legal, and my parents had no right to withhold my inheritance. They were ordered to return everything. The house in Beaverton was officially transferred to my name. The cash amount plus interest calculated over 13 years came to $380,000. My parents had to liquidate assets to pay me. They sold their house, the one I had grown up in, and moved into a small apartment. I felt no guilt about it. They had made their choices. Now they were living with the consequences. I moved into my grandmother's house. It felt right somehow, like coming full circle. The house smelled faintly of lavender, just like she always had. Her furniture was still there, covered in dust sheets. I spent weeks cleaning and renovating, making it mine while honoring her memory. In her bedroom closet, tucked away in a wooden box on the top shelf, I found something that made me cry. It was a stack of letters. Letters addressed to me. Letters my grandmother had written over the 4 years between when I disappeared and when she died. They were dated, organized, chronologically written in her careful handwriting. "My dear Whitney," the first one began, "I do not know where you are. Your parents say you ran away, but I do not believe them. I know something happened. I know they did something. I am so sorry I was not there to protect you. I hope wherever you are safe. I hope you know how much I love you. I have put everything I have in my will for you. When you are ready, when you find your way back, it will all be waiting. I believe you are alive. I believe you are strong. I believe you will survive. Love always, Grandma Ruth." There were dozens more. Years' worth of letters written to a granddaughter she hoped was still out there somewhere. She never stopped believing in me. She never stopped loving me. Even when everyone else had given up, she had faith. I sat on her bedroom floor surrounded by those letters and cried. Not sad tears, but healing ones. I cried for the little girl who had been abandoned. I cried for all the years I had spent alone. But I also cried with gratitude for this one person who had seen my worth when no one else did. Over the following months, I settled into my new life in the house. I continued working at Cascade Financial, but I also started thinking about how I could use my inheritance to help others. I remembered Maria, who had fed me every morning. I remembered Sage, who had taught me to survive. I remembered Helen, who had educated me. I remembered Linda and the Youth Hope Center, which had given me a second chance. All of those people had saved me in different ways. Now, I could save others. I started a nonprofit organization called Ruth's Hope, named after my grandmother. Its mission was to provide resources, education, and financial support to homeless youth. We partnered with shelters. We funded scholarships. We created mentorship programs. I poured my time, energy, and money into building something that would help kids like me, the ones society had forgotten. The work was fulfilling in a way my corporate job had never been. Every teenager we helped felt like a small redemption. Every success story felt like proof that survival was possible. I was not just surviving anymore. I was thriving, and I was helping others thrive too. As for my parents, I never spoke to them again. I heard through mutual acquaintances that my mother's cancer treatment was not going well, that she had less than a year to live, that my father was struggling to care for her alone. Part of me felt sadness for two people who had destroyed their own lives through their choices. But I did not reach out. I did not offer help. Some wounds are too deep to heal, and some bridges are burned beyond repair. I did not need their apology. I did not need their regret. I did not need anything from them. I had already gotten everything I needed from the only person who ever truly loved me, and she was gone. But her love, her faith in me, her legacy that lived on. One evening, about 6 months after everything was settled, I was sitting on the porch of the Beaverton house, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. I was wearing Grandma Ruth's necklace as always, and I touched the little heart pendant gently. I thought about that 8-year-old girl standing in Union Station watching her family leave without her. I thought about how terrified she had been, how alone, how certain she was that she would not survive. But she had. She had survived hunger and cold and fear. She had survived without the people who were supposed to protect her. She had built a life from nothing, and now she was not just surviving. She was living, really living, and she was free. Free from the weight of seeking approval from people who did not deserve her. Free from the pain of trying to earn love that was never going to be given. Free to be exactly who she had become through fire and struggle and determination. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the making of you. Being abandoned forced me to become strong. Being alone taught me self-reliance. Being unwanted showed me my own worth, not because someone gave it to me, but because I claimed it for myself. I did not need my parents to validate me. I did not need anyone to tell me I mattered. I knew I did, and that knowledge, that certainty, was worth more than any apology they could ever give. I smiled as the sun dipped below the horizon. Somewhere out there was another kid like me, scared, alone, thinking they would not make it. And maybe through Ruth's Hope we would find them. We would help them. We would show them what I had learned the hard way, that you are stronger than you think, that you can survive things you never thought possible, and that the people who abandon you do not get to define who you become. That power belongs to you alone. So let me ask you, have you ever felt abandoned by someone you loved? Have you ever had to rebuild yourself from nothing? I would love to hear your story in the comments below. Your experience matters, and sharing it might help someone else who is struggling. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more real stories about resilience and survival. And share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who needs to know that they are not alone, that they are stronger than they think. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope you find your own strength, your own peace, and your own freedom. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it.